Hi, and welcome to our last video in the series. Well, our last major video. We'll have a short conclusion video after this. In the second video, after the intro, I talked a little bit about the acquisition data here in our Saas stack or Saas Analytics stack that we're looking at here. Then I talked about onboarding in the last video. And then in this video, actually, I'll cover two things. I'll cover the critical action section. This is typically where you find things like behavioral analysis, retention, and then a little bit of the revenue, right? SaaS is, of course, a special case when it comes to revenue. There's a lot of very specific SaaS metrics, like monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue, and so on. So we'll talk a little bit about how to track those and what's the best way of adding a tool to the stack to look at those numbers. But let's start with critical actions. And critical actions really is, at this point, the user has onboarded. Let's say they onboard successfully. And now we want to understand how they actually use the product, right? Are they using it on a regular basis, whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly? And are they retained? Are they coming back? Do they love the product, right? This can be a very broad area, but we'll focus specifically on critical actions. So some of the most popular things that users love about the product. From a product perspective or from a product manager perspective, this can be things like feature adoption and things like that. It can influence your product roadmap. And then retention, which is are you sustaining using the product? And of course, retention varies a little bit, but we'll look at a few reports. Now for events, this is quite broad. So we have critical events and actions. So this means that what are some of the critical actions for your product that you need to track here? In our example, we're using a job search site, and we're looking at employers specifically. So employers who are posting jobs to hire people. In their case, their critical actions are things like the job posted, did they edit the job, did they successfully fill the job, and things like that. So there's always a handful, maybe 5 or 10 critical actions that really explain or understand what the product is and what users can do within the product. Right? Then for user attributes, we look at some behavioral traits, and this will also be very specific to your product. For example, this can be things like how many jobs has this company posted in total, right? How many jobs have they canceled? How many jobs have they successfully filled? And then how many people have they hired? Maybe how long the contracts have they been, right? These are traits that explain the behavior of a given user or company within the product, right? From a qualitative perspective, you might also see something like NPS score. Again, we're looking at customer satisfaction or how much people love the product. An NPS score can be an easy way to get started in this kind of world. From a technical perspective, once again, we'll keep building on this idea that we talked in the last video about tracking data from the server side. It'll likely be the best long-term option for your company. But if you can't, and if you want to do something that's a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, client side can still work, of course. Right. And our stack will be the same as before. We'll use segment and we'll use amplitude to track our data. So once again, here's segment. I covered quite a bit in the acquisition video, but we're gonna flow the data from either from a JavaScript source like a client side implementation, or maybe from a server side into the different analytics tools here. Now the first report we can look at here is an event segmentation report, and we'll look at just the most popular events within this account, right? And when we look here, we get to see events like you're searching for candidates, they onboard, and so on, right? So we have a few different things that are most popular actions here, and we can filter things out. We might not really care about the viewer loaded page. We might care about a job application or searching and so on, right? So this can start giving us a sense of what are the most popular actions users are doing within a product in comparison to other actions, right? Are they searching for candidates as much as they're posting jobs? Or are they successfully filling jobs as much as they're posting them, right? And here we're using a little bit some of the filters available to us. So we're looking at only employers and specifically employers who signed up. We know we can have employers who actually didn't sign up at all, right? Who just started the funnel and then just never completed it, right? So that's one event. And there's a few different things you can do here, right? So do different ways of filtering and slicing the data. But we just really want to get a sense of what are some of the popular actions within this product. Then the second report will be a retention report. And in this report, we can look at a cohort analysis, right? So we'll start by saying, show me all the new users, and then show me the users who then return and perform any active event. So an active event can vary for your product, but this is typically some kind of critical action. It might be posting a job, it might be filling a job, whatever that is. Viewing a page, firing the page view, those things typically don't qualify here. In this case, down here, we of course have different user types. We're actually only looking at employers. We can also do it through the filter type, as we saw before, or we can do it like this. You get roughly the same result. And here we see our retention, a retention curve. You might be also more familiar with a more cohort analysis curve, right? Where we have numbers here, you know, how many users fill the criteria on this week, and then what is the retention over time. And same thing. Once you define the retention and the frequency, that is, you know what makes a user retain, right? And then what's the frequency of usage for your product? That is, should they be used on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and so on. A typical example here is imagine something like a food ordering app, right? Like Skip the Dishes or Foodora or whatever may be available wherever you're watching this. You know, for a user to be retained for this kind of product, would they have to order food once a week, once a month, once every 2 weeks, once a day, right? You kind of figure out what is the expected usage for the majority of the users, and you of course are going to have power users who are going to do it more often, and maybe users who do it less. But this starts to play a little bit into this retention report, right? One more thing I was going to show you here on the behavioral traits. So we have our default amplitude properties, but then we have things like this. So this is some of the behavioral traits that we might have. You know, this product, for example, has credits. That is, people buy credits to be able to post jobs. So you can have credits. You know, how many job slots they have remaining. So they have a limit on how many jobs they can post at any given time. Total job posts, total job slots, things like that, right? So these are all behavioral traits that are very specific to this product. But from here, we can start to build more custom segmentations, right? And seeing for users who posted more than 10 jobs, how has the retention changed compared to users who posted less than 10 jobs? Those are the kind of questions you can start to explore once you have your data in order. Then our last step here in our Saas Analytics stack is our revenue data, right? And in here, we, you know, for events, we're really looking at some kind of subscription event, right? So this is a user who starts a subscription, and of course, that subscription might renew on a monthly basis or annual basis or any other kind of frequency you might be looking at. Typically, for that event, we're looking at things like what's the plan they're on, what's the amount, the frequency. Sometimes it's even helpful to track the old plan if they're upgrading, right? Or if they're upgrading or downgrading, and that can give you a way to then track how many people are upgrading or downgrading, what's the most typical upgrade, downgrade path, and so on. And for user attributes, then we'll track also traits around subscription. So these are things like what's the plan they're on, what's the frequency, how much revenue have they had with your company, all these kind of things. So these are all very revenue-specific traits. And subscription data, by far and large, should be tracked server-side, right? We talked a little bit about here where you might have an option depending on what kind of capacity you have with your team. But subscription data, really for the best accuracy, should be done server-side. And this typically can be done by firing from an API. Sometimes you have integrations from popular payment processors, but something you should definitely be aware of. In terms of our stack, we got segment, we got amplitude, and we got Recurly here as an example, but there's quite a few options here. Recurly, ChargeBeat. We're actually going to be looking at one called DataBox. In essence, these are tools that help you process payments, and they also give you a lot of the metrics out of the box. So there's a lot of payment processors like Recurly, ChargeBeat, and so on, that they're designed for SaaS companies. So they're able to create a lot of the analytics dashboards out of the box for you and calculate the logic for you. Typically, the logic around when a user churns, when a user renews, doesn't renew, all these kind of things can be quite complex to set up in the beginning, and it's really not needed because you can get them with a few clicks, right? So our typical report will look something like this, right? We can see how many new subscriptions happen in this month, how much new monthly recurring revenue, total subscriptions, total monthly recurring revenue, where we get some comparisons right here, right, compared to the previous month. Breakdown by plan, monthly recurring by plan, and so on, right? We get some other metrics. So these are all things that you could go out and find the formulas online for this and work them out and so on, and likely even recreate a lot of these metrics inside something like Amplitude. But it's just, in the beginning, you're better off just taking some kind of pre-built report and getting them done, and then eventually you can build upon them. In Amplitude, what you can track the revenue data in Amplitude, and that really is just to be able to tie it into everything else. So you have all your users who onboarded, all your users who are retained. Can you then confirm their revenue, right? Can you say, our most active users are also our users with the most revenue, or maybe it's not, right? So in here, you're taking the revenue data and the revenue events to analyze the product and product usage. But when it comes to revenue metrics like monthly recurring revenue and so on, very specific SaaS metrics, you'll likely be better off looking at something like a custom dashboard from your payment processor. And that's really it. We'll make a short conclusion video to finalize everything, but that's our final 2 steps in our analytics stack, our critical actions and our revenue data.
Hey, Julian here from Measure School. If you want to follow along with the next video in this series, then we have it linked up right over there. And if you want to learn more about the data-driven way of digital marketing, then definitely subscribe to our channel right over there. Now, my name is Julian. See you in the next one.